Hello, everyone, and welcome to Corn Ferry Live. Let's jump straight into our topic today as it's becoming more urgent by the week. And of course, it's about AI. AI tools are getting smarter. Investment is exploding. Every leadership team says AI is a priority. Yet inside many organizations, adoption is stalling. Employees are hesitant, managers frustrated, leaders are confused about why people aren't embracing tools they've already paid for. And I think there's a deeper question sitting underneath all of this. Are people actually resisting AI, or are they resisting uncertainty, poor communication, mixed messages, and change that feels like it's being done to them instead of with them? Because depending on who you ask, AI is either the biggest opportunity of the decade or the beginning of a workplace trust crisis. Some organizations are creating real momentum. Others are creating what people are starting to call compliance theater, where everyone says they're using AI, but nobody really changes how they work. So today, we're going to unpack why resistance is rising, what leaders may be getting wrong, and what an AI-ready culture actually looks like in practice. And this is absolutely a live conversation, so don't sit there quietly judging us in the comments without contributing. So to give you all a little nudge, jump into the chat right now and tell us, where are you joining from today? It's simple. I just want to know where you are. It just gives us a bit of an idea of where our audience are based, what parts of the world, what countries. Just love to see you and hear about where you're from. Maybe you want to just say hello. You don't want to give me your address, and that's okay too. Or maybe you want to tell us what industry you're in. And also throughout this session, throw your questions, challenges, skepticism, optimism, whatever you're seeing in your organization, straight into the chat, and I will get them to our wonderful guests, because I know there are going to be some pretty strong opinions on this topic today. And so, helping us unpack all of it are two brilliant minds: Julia Maddox, Korn Ferry Partner in Global AI Innovation, and Shanda Mintz, VP of AI Strategy and Transformation at Korn Ferry. Great to have you both here.
Thank you, Darren. Glad to be here. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Now, before we get into workplace AI resistance, I think we should acknowledge that humans are actually quite good at resisting technology in general. So I want a very quick confession from both of you. And everyone in the chat, you can join in as well. What's the piece of technology you resisted for embarrassingly too long? If it's QR codes, voice notes, camera on in meetings, online grocery shopping, I don't care what it is. And Julia, I'm coming to you first, because when we caught up beforehand, Shanda described you as the agility queen. So I think that presumes you've embraced every technology shift instantly and flawlessly since birth. So what did you irrationally resist in your time?
Well, I think I have resisted almost every single technology that has been introduced to me, either by consensual adoption, where I've downloaded an app and tried to force myself to use it, or something that a workplace has asked me to use. I'm an analog queen. I love doing things the old-fashioned way. I still thrive in a world of sticky notes and things that are very tangible. And I absolutely resisted AI right alongside all of those. I'll say that one that I have finally adopted that is the most simplistic of use cases is not taking my own notes anymore. So when I am in a Teams meeting, I am finally relying on the built-in transcriber. I had a incorrect understanding that my brain needed to take notes to synthesize information, and I've now realized that that's just not true, and it allows me to be more engaged when I'm not taking notes.
It's nice to see you've come to the dark side on that. Shanda, what about you?
Yeah, unlike Julia, I tend to jump right into technology. So I jumped right into AI well before we had Gen AI. But I do remember OneNote was a thing that I resisted, or also I love Excel. Anybody who knows me knows I am just a nut for, give me a good Excel table. I love it. And I'm also big on project management. So when we had to use formal project management tools and we didn't use them in Excel anymore, I'm like, what? No, give me the thing I'm used to and what I know how to use. Definitely. And Darren, this reminds me of when we first got email, and I don't know if everybody here was, in the workplace when we first got email, but I remember when we were pushed into using email, and then, everyone was like, well, what's going to happen? Work's going to change. This is going to replace me, right? We've got this way of communicating with people, but in-person relationships were so important. And then we overused email. And then we stopped some of the in-person relationships, right? And then we had to get trained. No, actually, there's a place for those in-person relationships. Some things can go on email, but not everything goes on email, right? And it was that balance. And I think we're kind of back there trying to figure out what's that balance right now.
Yeah, a time and a place, isn't it? And that's what we're all trying to work out right now. Brilliant. Thank you for that spontaneous question. Right. So let's get to the serious stuff, I guess. So Shanda, I sometimes get the feeling there are organizations where everybody publicly says they're excited about AI, and privately, half the workforce is thinking, I generally have no idea what this means for me. So when leaders describe resistance as people sort of struggling to adapt, are they misunderstanding what's kind of actually happening?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, there's a couple of things going on. And first off, I just want to mention, some of the things that show up as resistance isn't really resistance. But before I get into that answer, I think we need to take a step back and think about what this thing is that people are resisting, right? This AI transformation, it's not just a tech transformation. I'm not the first to say this. I won't be the last, but this is a talent transformation. It is as much about talent and shifting mindsets and behaviors as it is about giving people the tools and teaching them how to use these tools. So when we're looking at it just as a tech resistance, I think that we're looking a little bit shallow in that sense. And I think we need to go deeper, and we need to think about the behavioral change that we really need people to do. So one of the things that I've seen is, what are people actually resisting? There's a couple of trends that come up. We've got, what are the barriers to AI? And the first thing is, literacy and upskilling. Well, that's easy. That's about training. The second barrier is lack of time. I don't have time to go figure this stuff out, learn something new. The third barrier, this is a big one, lack of trust, right? So either, is the tool going to replace me? Is the tool going to hallucinate and get rid of either my credibility or my organization's credibility? So that's a huge barrier that causes resistance. And then what we're running a lot into now is, even people who've overcome those barriers, if we haven't built AI into our workflow, there's another place for resistance, right? So it's clunky. I'm having to do things, in an unnatural way right now. So it takes overcoming and addressing all of these to start to get that resistance to quiet down.
Sounds good. And Julia, anything to add to that?
I think as humans, we give a lot of power to things that we don't understand. It's really natural to fear something that is new and unfamiliar to us. And it's also true that AI is disrupting everything we know about work and jobs. And none of us know exactly how that's going to turn out. There's no other word to use for that except scary. It is scary. And whether you work in a job like Shanda and I do, where we're helping imagine some of these futures that are based around an AI core, or whether you are in any given industry, you're going to experience a certain amount of existential angst about that fact, right? We don't know what the future holds. We can help switch that fear into something that is much more empowered when we build certainty, when we help people understand, how are we making choices as an organization? How can you help craft your own job? How can you help bring some of that power back to your day-to-day? How can you help to use these tools to accelerate your own creativity rather than to diminish it? Because we tend to think that it is here to replace us automatically, rather than realize it's here to help make our work more profound, or even to enhance our creativity. There just are no rewards for opting out, though. And that's where a lot of individual employees tend to get this wrong. It's table stakes to be part of a modern workforce. And if you don't figure out your path to collaborating with AI in a fruitful way that augments your own potential, then you're going to be left behind. And that's how resistance tends to show up, at least as I see it with most of my clients.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's test this out. Oh, sorry, Gon, did you want to follow
I
up
was
on
going
that?
to double click on something that Julia said, and it reminded me, when this first came out, people always, I'm going to talk about generational differences real quick,
Mm.
because people thought that maybe newer entry points into the workforce, they would like embrace AI, and then there would be more resistance in maybe the boomers or people who are retiring who don't need to go through this change, right?
Mm.
And what we found is that some of the younger generations are not actually embracing AI as much as we thought they would. And some of the older generations are actually exploring. They've gone through all kinds of transformations before. This isn't their first rodeo. And so they know that they need to dive in.
That's interesting.
Just
Yeah.
thinking about my own children, I've got 2 teenagers. And when they see me in AI, they tell me I'm cheating. I shouldn't be using it, right? I shouldn't use that tool. And then also that fear of, look, how can I be working in a world when they don't even know what their jobs are going to be anymore? And it's that fear that Julia hit on. It is so important. That fear shows up as resistance. So we've got to come to the table. We've got to acknowledge the fears exist and address them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's test this out a little bit with everyone watching live. We've got a quick poll coming up on our screen now. Oh, there it is, brilliant. And I'm genuinely curious to see where this kind of lands. So, what do you think drives the most resistance to AI inside organizations? Is it fear and lack of trust, poor communication? Maybe it's unclear value, or is it lack of time to experiment? So have a look at that. Drop the number in the chat, and don't overthink it. Just go with your instinct based on what you're seeing in your organization right now. We're going to give you a little time on that. I can see some of the chat coming in. That's lovely, like that. The tech is working. And we'll come back to those results shortly, because I expect there might be a few surprises in there, or I hope so. Anyway, it all makes for an interesting conversation. So, Julia, let me throw a slightly more uncomfortable question at you, I guess. So, there are leaders right now saying, we bought the tools, we ran loads of training, we launched a new platform. Why hasn't transformation magically happened? So what are leaders fundamentally misreading about adoption?
Shanda mentioned leaders, almost every leader I work with tends to look at AI as a technology enablement exercise rather than a mindset shift and also a culture shift. And that can be seen right at the very top of the house. I was with a group of SVPs at a global tech firm last month, and we were there to work on their AI transformation journey. And we were talking at one point about that very question. So why has adoption stalled? They've made very large investments. They're not seeing that ROI, and their board and shareholders are starting to breathe down their neck about this, right? So at one point I asked everybody, okay, take out your laptops. We're going to use an agent we developed for this session to help with some of these strategy exercises. So this is a group, right, of brilliant people who have led technology revolutions of their own throughout their career, right? So about a quarter of the room didn't actually know how to access their enterprise AI. So I had to show them how to open up their own AI tool that they, of course, are there to develop strategy for getting their employees to adopt. And, again, these are such smart people who have adapted and who have been early adopters throughout their own career. And yet they're not understanding that this isn't technology enablement as normal. And we have to recalibrate how we show up to collaborate with these tools in a way that asks us to rethink our own value to the organization. And it has to start at the top of the house with leaders just like this. Korn Ferry's own AI strategy is focusing on how we work and how we think about our work and our own value alongside AI, not just what we produce or what we do. We need to think about what AI habits we form to help us work in service of our clients so that we can get better value for them. Not simply think about the tasks or the skills, but rethink those instincts, that muscle memory of how and when we reach for these tools and what our own unique chemistry is with them, how we're going to collaborate, how we're going to create more generative value. And all of that requires the leaders to lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
Shanda, any thoughts?
Oh my gosh. So Julia is absolutely correct in everything we're saying. It really has to start at the top of the house. And so many leaders feel like they're behind, right? So AI is moving so incredibly fast. And look, I'm in AI all of the time and have been for quite some time, and I can't keep up. So if I can't keep up when I'm in it all of the time, how do we expect leaders who have many other things on their plate to be able to keep up, to be able to identify not only that which tool their team should be using, but how do they use it in their workflow? I mentioned the workflow being a really key barrier, and I might be stepping ahead, but I'm seeing that unclear value is popping up as a popular answer. And that has to do with somebody not having spent time to think about how people work and how do we build AI into the way that they're working, right? Is it just going to be a tool that helps us write our notes? Well, if that's the case, it doesn't have all of this value that we see. And, we can't replace our jobs. We can't do those kinds of things. And nobody's expecting you to, but what value does it bring to the table? Help me be very clear on that, right?
Yeah, sounds good. As we can see, like you just suggested, we can see the poll on the screen there. Any kind of surprise with those results? Do we think there'd be more split, or is unclear value something that you're hearing a lot about?
Well, I think it makes sense, right? If we're having a problem with adoption, there isn't going to be appreciation for value. AI is not something you can just go and read a bunch of HBR or Korn Ferry Institute articles about and suddenly understand how this is going to create value for you personally. And it has to start with you personally for adoption to scale, right? We have to really be thinking about that individual's appreciation and understanding for how these tools create value. The only way to do that is to get hands on keys. You have to do that one-on-one, you versus AI, and go through that iterative process of building something very material and very specific that creates value, even if it's just for you. And that process is what is going to allow you to start reimagining your own work and your own value to your organization.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to banish that poll away because we're poll crazy today, and we've got another one for you. So I'm going to get you working out there once more. So I want real honesty here, as this next one kind of gets to the heart of a lot of what we've been talking about. So when AI gets discussed in your organization, does it generally feel like this is here to help you do better, more meaningful work? Or does it quietly feel more like we think everyone should now be able to do more with less? We're hearing that a lot as well. So the next poll up on screen, if we may. Is AI in your organization currently being framed more as efficiency or empowerment? I'm not seeing it on the screen yet, but it may be in the chat. I'll give it a little bit of time. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So just jump into the poll, throw your thoughts into the chat as well. Don't be shy. We'll come back to those results shortly as well. So nice and simple there. So let's move on to our next question. All right. So let's come back to, I don't know, because so far I've talked a lot about where organizations get stuck. But Shanda, here's the thing. You can mandate tool access, you can mandate training, you could probably mandate another 14 internal webinars if you want, but you can't spreadsheet your way into genuine adoption. So if forcing this doesn't work, what actually does create sort of meaningful AI adoption?
Yeah, great call out. One of the things leaders are misreading is that access and just trainings equal adoption. And it doesn't. We said that it was a mindset shift before. And we know from years and years of, studying behavioral change, that the things that we measure and the things that we hold people accountable for, those are the things that they're going to do, right? So it's driven on, our goals that we're setting for our organization. It's driven on how we're rewarding those organizations. But here's a mistake people make. Leaders tend to measure the wrong things. They're going back to, they're measuring, are we using these tools, right? And they're thinking usage, or they're thinking learning sessions equals adoption, and it doesn't, right? So we got to be measuring both usage, but actually more importantly, we got to be measuring impact and how that impact equates to outcomes for our business. So this is something that I cannot recommend enough through this.
And Julia, kind of listening to that, one thing that really kind of stands out to me is you can kind of force compliance, but you can't really force curiosity. So at some point, people have to feel the value for themselves. So how do organizations create the conditions where AI starts feeling useful, empowering, maybe even exciting, rather than just another thing employees are being told to do?
Yeah, when people are being asked to not just reimagine their work, but even their workplace identity all around AI, the motivation for that has to come from an intrinsic place. It just has to be self-motivated. So an individual employee really needs to see and feel firsthand how AI can not just make their work product better, but it can make their work experience more fun. AI gives us access to essentially a creativity and execution accelerator machine, a partner that can help make our roughshod ideas tangible really, really quickly. And that's one of the reasons why Korn Ferry likes to start with AI in the flow of life when we're introducing this AI culture shift to the people that we work with. And we genuinely have them just sit there, develop a use case for AI that is personally motivating, solves a personal challenge in their own life, and then build it quickly. This is how I fell in love with AI and started to see it as something that could maximize my creativity rather than replace it, which was a genuine fear that I had as an individual employee before I joined an AI team. But really, leaders need to give employees not just the time to do this, but the permission, and they need to show it. I know Shanda and our boss, Brian Ackerman, he will show up with something he's hacked together over the weekend all of the time, something with AI. He'll show up with a lesson learned, something that blew up in his face, something that worked really well. He's modeling that for the rest of the organization. And then once we get that adoption and that individual excitement around AI, of course, then we start to see the opposite problem, which is over adoption and over reliance. But as we started today with, it's all about balance, right? Like everything in life, it's about finding that balance between AI and human. And that's one of the most common things that we work with our clients on.
Yeah.
Okay, let's tackle a phrase that seems to get thrown around a lot right now: AI ready culture. Sounds great, but can also sound a little bit like something printed on a conference tote bag. So kind of let's make it real. When you walk into an organization that's genuinely AI ready, what do you actually see happening? I don't know, who would like to take that first?
Yeah. I know we recently put out some contents on 6 ways to build an AI ready culture, right? Around changing the mindsets. But I want to focus on these small groups and these sprint initiatives. This is really key in unlocking AI within your organization, but also figuring out where AI fits into that workflow. So leaders need to create that safe environment for people to raise questions, for people to be transparent if they do have some of those fears, because we have to be part of the conversation. It's usually a signal that something else is going on. So we really have to listen and understand that. But those small groups, I mean, we've had a few, I love Julia actually coined the phrase AI play dates, where you've got little groups that can work together using, under a common theme. They have the same kind of work together, and to figure out, how do I pull this into my way of work? But Julia, I know you have some great ideas as well.
Yeah, to build on that one, I think a few artifacts of a culture that has actually embraced AI or is beginning that journey. One is definitely working out loud with it, right? It's not just bringing an AI collaborated product to a meeting. It's also open sourcing how you made it and talking about your process of getting there. I've had people try to catch me out for using AI so much, both clients and colleagues, right? And we have to switch that paradigm to proudly showing how we used AI and how it helped create a better product, and how it helped create a more efficient process, and have that be the goal rather than doing it in the shadows in an almost guilty kind of way. Another way that it shows up as an artifact is we start to see lots of little unofficial moonshots around AI popping up around an organization. So like, who's going to be the first one to figure out how to automate this report, or how to do live prototyping with customers or something like that. And people starting to show each other, learn from each other, build on each other's solutions, and start to see that again organically. When we see it at the top level, and it's kind of an organizational wide formal goal, it isn't always as effective as when it's starting to bubble up. And then I would say a third way that we see it take hold in an organization, and we see this at Korn Ferry a lot, is when a specific AI use case or application starts to gain popularity and almost goes viral in an organization. So our colleague Todd Blaskowitz, for example, he started bringing interactive AI created HTMLs to client meetings in place of PowerPoint decks. And I mean, can you even imagine a consultant without their trusty PowerPoint? But what he's finding is that this leads to a much richer, dynamic conversation that's more exploratory. It's something easier for them to take and then socialize on their end. And it's a much more rich and creative way to have these dialogues. And when he started doing that, of course, it caught off and started to spread around the organization, and everyone's creating an HTML for everything. So I think those are a few of the very specific ways we see it and start to be able to say, okay, it's working. That tipping point has happened.
Great, that's great. Now, as always, I've got 1,000 questions and I've pretty much run out of time. But I do want to give you both a chance to have a kind of final thought, something for our viewers that they can take away, something that you just feel is essential for them as they move forward in this as well. So, Shannon, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So, when you do find how AI is going to work within your organization, please just communicate the heck out of that. Grab onto it. Show how it's worked. That HTML story that Julia just talked about. People were saying, PowerPoint was the issue. We couldn't create great PowerPoints with AI, but it was the mindset shift. You didn't need PowerPoint to still go to your clients and create great presentations. So we had to give them a mindset shift of how to do work differently. And so if you can find that, then just communicate the heck out of it.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Julia?
Whether you personally are struggling with your adoption or whether you're helping employees or an organization that's struggling, help them figure out how they can build something within the next 90 minutes that is going to create value for them personally. And the best way to do that is to define a very specific one-sentence problem, go into your enterprise AI tool, and start building that in partnership with your AI. And there tends to be this idea that there's a barrier to entry, that there's some sort of knowledge or some sort of permission that's needed to get started. Do not let the perfect get in the way of the good. Get started, get your hands dirty as quickly as possible. And once that seal is broken, the learning just flows.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, both of you. Been fantastic. Brilliant insights, great conversation. If only we had more time. Really appreciate your time. So thanks for joining us today, and hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, I think there's just one big thought I'll leave everybody with today. AI adoption is not just a technology rollout, it's a leadership test. The organizations that move fastest won't necessarily be the ones that push the hardest, but be the ones that build the most trust, the most clarity, and the most confidence in how people actually work alongside AI. Because maybe the real question isn't how quickly can people adopt AI, it's can organizations create cultures where people feel safe enough, curious enough, and empowered enough to actually use it well. So hopefully today has given you a few ideas and maybe a few uncomfortable questions to take back into your organization. If you want to explore this topic further, we've shared the link in the chat to our AI-ready culture content and related AI resources. So do take a look at that after the session. Thanks to all of you who joined us live, got involved in the polls and the chat, and shared your thoughts with us today. We really do appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Until next time, goodbye.